Ladies and gentlemen, it is good to be back for another weekend of talking about everything in the geek like culture. Welcome to Nation80 podcast. This is episode 30. Episode 30. Mike, I think last time we made it to about episode 52 before we went on hiatus and then came back. So we're almost there to the number we are before. Now, we were doing this in comic book terms. We're already on episode 82. What's going on, Mike? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Been a little under the weather this week, but and maybe that has to do with that it's snowing here.
Ooh.
But I woke up this morning, I was like, more snow. That's great. But yeah, no, doing good. Ready to start episode 30. It seems very. I guess if you take it in accumulation, we've done a little over 80 episodes, and to get back to that 50 benchmark would be really nice. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, a lot of things come up this week. I've been playing a lot of games. I should say playing a lot of games. I've just been playing a lot this week, especially at work. And I'm excited to talk about some of these trailers that have come out for this week. So yeah, doing good.
Mike, since you said you had some stuff that you have been playing this week, why don't you start us off and tell us what you've been digging this week?
Yeah, so mostly what I've been doing is playing Spider-Man, Miles Morales. I've been trying to get deep into that game and just really enjoyed it on the Steam Deck. It's just a lot of fun, whether I'm playing handheld or docked. The game just looks really good. And I was talking to Elias about this the other day, and it just seems like the game's harder than the other Spider-Man game. And I don't know if it's because of ju- just the different game mechanics, or not. It's not so much the different game mechanics, but the different fighting styles, or if it's because I did put it on a harder level. I've been getting beat left and right, and not by like bosses, but like the medium bosses, the light bosses, and then just the low level street thugs. So it's a lot of fun. I think one of the things that I feel like is so much better than the first Spider-Man game is that they make it seem very cinematic when you do the fight scenes, whereas you're just going to town and you're doing your finishing moves, and it all just seems so seamless. And I always feel like, man, I can't believe I pulled this off. And so for our last episode, if you guys want to check that out, episode 29, I did put gameplay footage of that throughout the episode, and it looked really good. I think I was more surprised about how it looked docked. I've been playing this game at 30 frames per second, and it just looks good. Looks really good. I love the style, how Miles Morales swings through the city. I love how he fights. Is very different from a Peter Parker. I love using the bioelectric shock. It's awesome. So Spider-Man Miles Morales been playing a lot. And then there's an indie game that I've been playing called Subnautica. And it's a survival game, basically. Like the game starts off, you're on a ship, the ship crashes into this planet. You're in this escape pod in the middle of an ocean, basically, and you have to survive. Uh, and it's one of those survival games that actually has an ending to it. So it's not just you're randomly surviving. And so it's a very hard game. They do give you different difficulty levels. The first one I thought was like the easy one, where you're basically looking for supplies and you're looking for equipment and things to craft, but you also got to keep your thirst up. So you got to keep hydrated, and then you got to keep your hunger up, so that you're not starving. And in the middle of the ocean with no instructions whatsoever, they don't give you like, oh, hey, look at this. This is where you might find stuff. You got to pull clues from the environment, pull clues from like the AI when she's speaking, and it's hard. And it's got a day night cycle where you're diving. You don't start off with a flashlight or any kind of light uh, as you're diving into the ocean. Man, that shit is scary, man. Like I was like, oh my god, I need light. I'm getting randomly attacked by certain fish, and uh, just the vastness of this game, and I'm just at the beginning of it is very intense. It's intimidating. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So those are pretty much the two games I've been playing so far.
Mike, I have a few questions about Miles Morales. One of the things I was wondering about back in the day, well, actually, it came to my mind more now since I just recently played Spider Man like during the holidays, is is Miles Morales like playing Spider-Man with just Miles Morales, or do you feel the difference in both games? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
does it look like they just put a skin on it and you're just playing as Miles, or does it have its own? Does the game feel like its own game? Because I think, and I don't know how well it sold, because to be honest with you, I felt like it came and it disappeared when the PlayStation 5 was having all its struggles and so forth. But I don't recall if it sold as well as the actual Spider-Man game. And I don't know if it was looked at as its own thing, or just more of a Spider-Man clone in a
Yeah, so
sense.
so for the PS5, it launched very well. It did not do as good as the original Spider-Man, and I think that's only because it's not as long as the
Mm,
original Spider-Man, and I think a lot of people knew that. But it's not like a hey, we're just putting the skin on or whatever. Like it's a very unique. You can tell, like I said before, it's like when you're swinging through New York, it doesn't. It looks nothing like Peter Parker. Okay,
okay.
Peter Parker and Miles Morales have a very different way of swinging through the city, and I guess I would say that with Miles, it's not as refined. He does a lot of kind of crazy, uh, like I said, unrefined swings, because he is new, he is young, and even with the fighting, like the fighting, I would say even with the swinging seems faster
Mm,
than Peter Parker. He seems a little bit more reckless.
mm,
Uh, the fighting is, I want to say, not as powerful as Peter Parker. Like I felt like with Peter Parker, just even with the standard attacks, I felt like Peter Parker was way stronger. Uh, and it feels like that with Miles Morales. Like he can do a lot of strikes. He seems more agile, seems a bit faster with the strikes, but they're just not as impactful. But the real punch is when you get that meter up to use your Bioshock, and you can do some real crazy attacks with the Bioshock. And I feel like with Peter Parker, he's very reliant on his gadgets.
okay.
Whereas Miles, yes, he has gadgets and all, but he is very much reliant on his powers that Peter Parker doesn't have, whether it be the Bioshock or the invisible camouflage. And so I find myself using that a lot, and especially with the kind of special moves that you get with the Bioshock and with the cloak camouflage or whatever. I find myself mapping those back buttons way more now, using them way more, just because there's so much of them to remember, and it's just easier for me to use those back buttons. Uh, and then even with the story is just it's pretty deep. I think the story I like way better than the Peter Parker story. Um, Much more impactful. Uh, of course, the mannerisms with Miles, it just makes it feel it's a completely different guy. He's got his sidekick and Geki there, who's helping him out, and it's cool. It's really cool. So there's even a scene. Again, I'm maybe, I don't know, a quarter of a way through the game, and uh, even you share a scene with Peter Parker and a fight scene with Peter Parker where you're trying to take down the Rhino, uh, and the two of them work together, which really makes me excited for this new Spider-Man game when you're gonna have Venom in it, and so yeah, it is definitely its own standalone game. It's not gonna be as long as the original Spider-Man, but it definitely, like, you feel like Miles Morales in this for sure, absolutely.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's awesome to hear. So what I've been really digging this week is so I've mentioned it time and time again. I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk, but I'm also a big fan of Cyberpunk 2077. And back in the day, I bought a Cyberpunk 2077 book titled The World of Cyberpunk 2077. And the reason I usually buy books like this is I love the art books where, for example, I bought them mostly like when Star Wars came out. I bought a couple of their art books when I can't remember, Force Awakens first came out, because Kylo Ren's design just looked so amazing that I wanted to see how they came up with the ideal for his helmet and things of that nature in the world and droids and stuff like that. And then it
Mm.
kind of bled to Black Panther, and then I believe Pacific Rim, and they do it for video games as well, where they give you a book and it basically gives you the notes of everything. Now, this book isn't an art book, but it tells you everything about how immersive the Cyberpunk 2077 world is. And they put it all in of course, in one book. And they're telling you about the enemies, they're telling you about particular areas, they're telling you about particular people and things like that. And so it's been fun really cracking that open because I recently watched the anime Edge Runners about a few months ago as well. And there's something that we don't think about sometimes when we look at these open world games. Is like when you build an open world game, certain companies will make sure that, like, for example, when you look at GTA 5, GTA 5 has been around for almost a decade. And each part of GTA 5, you can almost feel the story coming off of it. They've built this immersive world that even after the game hasn't, I mean, the game still gets updated, but like, for example, not, I don't know how many people play the game these days, but people create these whole worlds where they got gangs going against each other with the mods and all this other stuff. They built a massive immersive world that I understand why it's kind of hard for Rockstar to get away from it, because number one, it's still a cash cow, but it has its own legacy of its own. And there's other games like for example, like Mike, I know you've been playing Wildlands. That's more jungle and stuff like that, and it still just kind of sits in one world, basically like or one country you want to call it, and it doesn't have really much difference in it. But when you look at like something like an open world game that's sci-fi, or I might even add Red Dead Redemption to it, all of those areas have some sort of immersion, some sort of, you have to create everything from the ground up, right? And so when I look at that and just seeing how much work went into it, Witcher is another good one too. There's so many different ways you can go with it that it's just exciting to read how they came up with the ideals for that. Now, on the gaming side, I've been playing. Let's see, what was I playing this week? Actually, I didn't get to play. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get to play much this week, but I did get to watch The Last of Us episode 1.
Ooh,
And that was it's a good start. I'll put it that way. You get to see a little bit. There's not there, you can see that they're building the world that's going on. All I can say is my man who plays Joel, because I can't think of his name when we're recording now. Uh,
Pedro
uh,
Pascal.
yes, that man does a lot. I don't know when he gets to rest, because between the Mandalorian, between
What
The
was it?
Last
Was
of
it
Us,
Narcos? He was on Narcos for a minute.
he was on Narcos, and he still does movies. Like I saw that movie he did with Nick Cage, which is a really good movie. Um, I mean, he doesn't rest, it seems, but he plays a convincing Joel. To me, so far so good, right? One of the people I also want to mention is Anna Torv, one my girl from Fringe. I Look, be real, I had a crush on her after watching her in Fringe, but she still knocks out the park in this show. And if you've never watched Mindhunters, she's on that show as well on Netflix. She just always comes through with her acting skills or chops, whatever you like to call it, and she doesn't disappoint again this time either. So that's what I've really been digging this week. I'm going to probably, I don't know if I'll be watching The Last of Us on a weekly basis, not because it's bad, but just because I like to. I'm not these days. I'm not necessarily big on having to come back every week to check out an episode.
Right, you
I
need a
would
few
love to
episodes
binge
to get
watch.
into it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And even if it wasn't the case, I would love to had at least 3 episodes just to see where things are going. And that's just me being greedy. Like they gave the first episode's an hour and a half. Like they gave
Right.
me more than enough. But I would just love to have seen some more action scenes if there's anything out of it. But I'm happy with what I got.
Now, have you played Last of Us?
I played a handful of levels and then I got rid of my PS4.
Okay.
But the bit I did play, I did enjoy. But
Yeah.
actually, you know what? I was annoyed because I got stuck somewhere, and however they used to have their save screens, they didn't give me an opportunity to go, let's say 30 seconds before this particular incident, so
Mm.
I could get myself out of this situation. So like point blank, it's almost kind of like a Resident Evil thing where it's like, I don't have bullets. There's no other way for me to take this guy out. And so he's going to kill me every time. And you feel like you almost need to start the level over again, but I didn't have a loading point to start the level over again. And so I was like, forget it. I'm not going through this.
Yeah, I've never played the game, and I've heard nothing but great stuff. I'm waiting for it to come out on Steam Deck. It should be out, I think, either this year or next year.
March this year.
Oh, this year. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Because I do want to play that game. I just have heard nothing but great things about it, and I am a big fan of Pedro Pascal. Obviously, like you said, The Mandalorian, Narcos. He was in the movie with he was in the Equalizer 2 with
That's right.
Denzel.
That's right.
So I'm a huge fan of that guy. He does do a lot. And there was another movie he was in. He was in one of the oh, what's the gentleman? What's the spy movie? Uh, with the oh my gosh, I think they're on their third iteration now. The first one had Samuel Jackson in it. Um, it was based off of a kid who
Kingsman.
the
Kingsman.
Kingsman. I don't know why I say the
Yes.
gentleman. Yeah, but
Yeah.
he was in the second Kingsman.
That's right. He sure
With
was.
yeah, so yeah, he does a lot. He does a lot, and I've heard pretty much everything. Everybody, what has said, what you said. Like it was a great first episode. So
Mhm.
I want to start watching it. Like you said, I'll wait a few episodes before I get into it and um, you know go down that route. Actually, you know what I just started was Big Sky. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I've seen it around. I believe it's with the 2 ladies in it.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it's been recommended to me. I haven't started it though.
Yeah, so we just started on a whim, only because we were watching another show, and once that show was over, just picked a random show to start, and it was Big Sky, and I was like, "Well, I'll give it a try, see what it is," because I knew Ryan Philippe was in it, and
Mm,
um, I think before Shooter, I was never a fan of Ryan Philippe. I was like, "Yeah, it's Ryan Philippe. Who cares about Ryan Philippe?" But then I
yeah,
watched Shooter, the TV show,
he was
and I
really
was
good
like,
in
"Damn!"
that.
I was like, "Damn, Ryan Philippe is a badass." And so let me watch him in Big Sky, and uh, it's a good show. He doesn't last past the first episode, but it's a good show. So definitely something to keep an eye on.
Mike, you know what? There's something else I forgot to tell you about. I went ahead and finally bought something off of HasLabs. This is Hasbro's basically what's it? It's not GoFundMe. I'm trying to think of the other website that you can go and you can donate so that you can possibly be one of the first to Kickstarter. It's like
Oh, okay,
Hasbro's version of Kickstarter,
okay.
right? And so what they do on HasLabs is they try to get a consensus and say like, hey, we are thinking about making a 30-inch tall Sentinel, Marvel Sentinel. Are you guys interested? It's going to cost about, let's say, $400, and we're going to see if we get $10,000. I mean, if we get 10,000 people to back it, we will put this to production, and then we'll start to, we'll release them after like 6 months to a year, right? They've done it with Marvel, they've done it with Transformers, they've done it with Star Wars, they've done it with GI Joe, and I think they did with a few others. So some notable ones is they did one for Galactus, a Sentinel. They did two for Transformers. They did another one for I know it's not an F-16, but the GI Joe F-16, and they did it for another GI Joe vehicle. And then they also did it for Star Wars. They did it for the lady from Obi-Wan Kenobi. They did it for her lightsaber,
Mm,
and they had a Ghost Rider set for Robbie Reyes, where you got the car and you got the figurine. It was really cool, but unfortunately, the Star Wars one didn't get backed, and the Ghost Rider one didn't get back. But the Transformers one of them did, and I ended up buying a Transformer from them. I bought two of them, and the reason I bought two was for one for myself, and then the other one sells so well that I can sell the other one and pay off me buying two, point
Mm,
blank,
mm,
right? So what I bought was there used to be a Transformer series called Transformer Victory. It never came to the States. It was a Japanese exclusive Transformers show. And it I think by then Hasbro was kind of tired of Transformers, or there was something going on. And so Transformers kind of stopped in the States after season 3, but it kept on going on in Japan. And so what we find out in Transformers Victory is that Optimus Prime dies again, and he is now brought back as Victory Leo. He's brought back as a robotic lion. And then there's another character by the name of Star Saber. And once those two combine, they turn into Victory Leo, I believe, or some sort of their name. So I went ahead and purchased that, and I think I purchased it for, I think it was $200, like $200. And I remember both of them came together to be 400. But looking on eBay, I could sell the one that's sitting in my closet now, and it would most likely either get close or borderline or surpass a little bit the price of me paying for both of them. So basically, I'll have a free toy out of it, because I don't know if you remember, I had messaged you a couple weeks ago, and I was like, when did action figures become so dang expensive?
mhm.
Right. And I knew I wanted a Transformer. I still want an Optimus Prime, but Optimus Prime is ridiculously expensive until they probably do another re-release. And I want a combiner. I would love to get a Constructicon set or something like that, just to have sitting on my desk or whatever, because that was that toy that I always wanted as a kid, that your mom might buy you one of the foot, might buy you a leg, but you just never got all 5 pieces, unfortunately. So that was the unfortunate part. So, but it's a pretty dope toy. I haven't really played with it too much, but I'm super happy with the way it came out. And I did put my money down for another set. They basically did the good guy, now they're doing the bad guy. So when that one comes out too, I'll be pretty happy about that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking on their website right now, and I see that they did Cybertron, Unicron,
Yes, I forgot about that. Yes, they did Unicron, and now
and
that bad boy goes for like almost 2K on eBay or something like that.
yeah, so it started. I guess it started at 575 when it was trying to be backed.
Hmm.
Um, what I think is cool about this is the scale of it is huge,
Hmm.
but it transforms into the planet.
Yeah.
That is super dope. I mean,
So Mike, yeah. So HasLabs is pretty cool, just because they, like I said, it's like a Kickstarter, and they're just not making stuff that doesn't have any interest behind it. So like you were talking about Unicron, uh, that thing was super cool. I saw it when it first came out, and I was like you said, I wasn't interested in paying 500 some odd dollars for it. But to be honest with you, if I had thought about it like I did with the ones that I bought now, I would have bought two, and then I would have, because the resale value for Transformers is nuts. I could have literally bought one and then got the other one to pay for both of them, basically.
yeah, I'm just looking at the detail of some of these figures. I'm looking at the Mandalorian's Razor Crest was on here, and we had the detail on this. Lord knows how much this is going for now on eBay, but at the time it was trying to be sold, it was 350. Um, so these are pretty cool, especially if you're a collector and you're into that kind of thing, and spending that kind of money on something, and then like you said, investing, uh, you know, thousands of dollars later, this is potentially worth. This is pretty cool. I mean, I'm just looking at the detail of some of these things, and like I said, that Unicron was massive, and the fact that it could transform from its robot form into the actual planet,
Yep.
that's amazing. That
If I
that to me alone is just like, oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, if I ever find it for a reasonable price, I have to buy it. Between that, the Galactus, that's another one that I think is pretty dope. But I don't know if you saw it, but did you even see the Ghost Rider one, the HasLab Engine of Vengeance?
Yep, yep, I saw that one. Yep.
Don't get me wrong, I don't think I would have bought it, but I really love the detail that was put into that. So, I think they did a really good job. It unfortunately wasn't funded, but that if I was a bigger maybe Ghost Rider fan or something like that, I would have definitely bought something like that.
Right,
But
right.
oh well. All right, Mike. So let's get into some of the news that we had this week. So let's get the sad stuff out the way so we can talk about some good stuff. So let's start off by talking about some unfortunate stuff. And we're going to talk about Microsoft laying off I believe they laid off about 10,000 employees recently. So the big thing that came out of this was that a lot of that staff, some of that staff came out of 343 Studios, and it really affects what's being developed for Halo Infinite. And I was listening to a gaming YouTube channel, I think yesterday or the day before, and they were mentioning the fact that they thought that 343 or the fact that Bungie wasn't there was going to be the destruction of Halo. And it ended up being Microsoft itself, because Microsoft has surely not given Halo the attention. Remember back in the day, like Microsoft had Halo, let's say maybe Gears of War. Uh, the PlayStation had Uncharted. I'm trying to think what that other game might have been. Remember that one shooter game that was big on PlayStation for a while? It never
Oh,
really became.
yeah, I know which one. It's like something Warzone.
I can't
Oh
recall what
man,
it was, but it never
yeah.
became super popular. But it was like those were the Sony Microsoft staples. And at one point, I remember anytime a Halo game came out, the rush to go get it between Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo ODST, Halo. I know there's another one I'm missing in there. And then remember they had the deluxe package, the ultimate package where you got like a statue or a figurine or the vehicle, and it was so cool. But now Halo Infinite doesn't seem. We talked about this before, but Halo Infinite didn't even seem like it was done at the time when they did it. But I'm going to read this article before we get into it. 343 has released a tier statement reinforcing the notion that it's still making Halo for Microsoft after mass layoffs hit the company as part of a broader reduction of 10,000 employees at the megacorp. Halo and Master Chief are here to stay. 343 Industries will continue to develop Halo now and in the future, including epic stories, multiplayer, and more of what makes Halo great. The short statement was meant to quell rumors that 343 was being taken off Halo after these layoffs in general underperformance from Halo Infinite, and yet it almost raises more questions than it answers. In the case of Epic Stories, it's always been unclear what Halo's next plans were for Master Chief outside of a source material burning Paramount Plus series. There were never any concrete plans laid out for the future Infinite story content starring Master Chief, nor any public information about a new mainline game continuing its story, other than vague rumors about something called Halo the Endless, referring to the new enemy tease in the end of Infinite. So here we are with what I am going to say the end of Halo, because I don't know if there is a game these days that needs to be the face of a company as times have changed. Because Mario and Nintendo will always be synonymous with each other, but Sony's face has changed throughout the years. Because you know what, Uncharted is a great game, but you know how gamers are; they're always craving for something new. So I wouldn't even say that they're the face of the company. There's Last of Us now, and you can't really make Last of Us your mascot anymore. When we were coming up, it used to be like, remember PlayStation 2 used to have Laura Croft kind of be the face of PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1. It doesn't really happen anymore. So I don't see Microsoft really keeping this. Their cash cow, oddly enough, is probably still Minecraft and their PC titles. To be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't been in console gaming in a while, and the Xbox to me is just, I might as well just play PC because all their games come to PC anyway. But I don't see them needing to have that that stellar title anymore. And unfortunately, I think the victim is going to be Halo because of that. Mike, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think what they said with that statement was that yeah, they have been layoffs because it wasn't just 343; it was also Bethesda, and I think another one that had cuts to them. Um, I am concerned for Halo as far as especially the multiplayer, because that's what has really been struggling. Their single player did very well; it got very well rated, uh, but as I mentioned before we got on, it seems like Microsoft is heading in a direction where if they do another single player, it's not going to be handled by 343. Okay, because they've had multiple chances to do Halo games and they haven't done that well. This is I think, been their best Halo game, uh, but they've had some missteps, and that's been mainly in the multiplayer part of it. Uh, Mainly because they've gotten they got rid of the split screen last year, which a lot of people were like they call it that took a lot of people the wrong way. They had issues with the battle pass and the progression system, and so all of those things have changed eventually. But they had also mentioned, I forget what the name of it was called, but a feature where they were going to let uh, other people outside of 343 develop levels for Halo, and that hasn't come to fruition yet. And so I think that's why they're having so many problems. As far as like face of the company type deal, I think everybody's known for a while that Halo, just like with oh gosh, what's their other one? Their other shooter, which I can't. That's fallen off too. They're on there. I think they're fifth or
Gears of
sixth
War?
game. Gears of War. Both those games have fallen off. Um, I don't know. I don't think or Microsoft will get rid of Halo, just because it's a name brand that everybody likes. But I also don't think that they're concerned with keeping everything on Xbox. Like you said, you can play a majority of their games on PC. Uh, and their philosophy is way different than PlayStation. PlayStation really depends on their first party titles. Yeah, you got Last of Us, but their front runners are God of War and Horizon, and so they ultimately rely on those first person IPs, which is why they've been putting up such a huge fight to not have Microsoft buy Activision, because Call of Duty was a PlayStation exclusive at first, and then it was rolled out. And so, uh, PlayStation's all about keeping people on their consoles. I think Microsoft is mainly moving on to, and you see this with the Game Pass. Okay, the Game Pass compared to PlayStation's version is light years ahead, and Microsoft is all about as long as we get people to subscribe to our Game Pass, and we have more and more titles that we can put on there, then we're golden. Because eventually it's going to get to a world where there's not even going to be any consoles, where you can just do everything streaming online. It won't happen for a while. We don't have the infrastructure for it, but that's where Microsoft is headed. Uh, so I think that Halo itself is, yeah, I think they're dead in the water. You know, it's unfortunate. I still want to play Halo Infinite, just because I've always loved the Halo storylines. I've never been really into their multiplayer, uh, but and I think the only time I've been into their multiplayer was maybe the Halo 1 and Halo 2 when we used to play locally. Uh,
Hmm.
but other than that, I don't really care to play multiplayer games. I'm all about the story, and Halo has such a long and very evolved story. And so I should say recently, but earlier last year, especially when I got to Steam Deck, I had an opportunity to start playing all the Halo games over again. So, I got through Halo 1 because I have the Master Chief Collection. And I got through Halo 1. I started Halo 2, and I'm remembering, man, these stories were pretty good. So what I have heard is that uh there is speculation that, so if they do send it out to a third party, it the Halo series may not focus on the Master Chief, and it may focus on some of the other Spartans or on other units. So, like we had with Halo ODST. That was a great game.
Mm-hmm.
That was a magnificent game. I loved it. Had Nathan Fillion in it, for crying out loud. So I love that that they went into a different direction for that game. So I think if Halo is to survive, especially on the single player part of it, and then eventually onto the multiplayer part of it, they gotta send it somewhere else. Because right now 343 is not doing well on the multiplayer part of it, and I think that's why it's fallen off so much.
Mike, did you ever watch the Halo TV show?
I watched maybe the first 3 or 4 episodes, and after the first episode, I was like, "Bump this," and I got a couple of episodes in, and I was like, "Okay, it's not too bad." But then there was an episode I saw, and I was just like, "Okay, this is getting dumb." So it was such a departure for what we knew and loved from the original source material, which I'm never always like, "Oh, it's got to be exactly like it," but uh, just how it was done, I would go back and watch it again, just because I was curious. Uh, but it wasn't as bad as what I initially thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think I saw, like you said, the first 3 episodes, but it was one of those things where I had it on while I was doing something else, and I didn't really pay attention to it. And then before I knew, I realized it wasn't really. It had nothing to grab me to keep me interested in watching it at all. And I think that was its bigger problem. And I think because there was so many legalities in the background and so many, to be honest with you, so many hit and misses in the background. Because remember, they had a couple of cartoons. I think they had a singular live action movie, something like that. Because of all that stuff, by the time they finally got this out there, it was kind of like too little, too late. Like if you had gotten that like peak time when Halo was around, I won't even say peak time when Halo was around, but just somewhere close to that,
Right.
then I think it would have hit a little bit differently. But the fact that, you know, Halo, to be honest and to be fair here, is an afterthought these days. It's one of those, it's like how I feel about Saints Row, where it's like I remember when that game was so much fun, and you keep on hoping that when you come back, it's going to be fun again. And somehow they kind of missed the mark from you like really, really enjoying it. Mass Effect is another one where it's like if you just do these handful of things, I'll be fine. And they go, hey, you know what? We're going to just go ahead and introduce X, Y, and Z. And then guess what? We're going to go ahead and use our most half-ass servers to start this thing off. And then nothing works and it doesn't receive the attention it does. And it's heartbreaking, unfortunately. The only game I can think of that has been kind of successful with that recently is Tomb Raider. And I just remember how bad, and I didn't even play the early Tomb Raider games, but the other ones were so good that I had no choice but to play them, you know. But I just don't understand sometimes that, this is an IP that is beloved and you don't have to do much to make it loved. And like you said, the single player is great, the multiplayer was trash, but they just don't seem to. And I mean, they have level building now, and still they couldn't make it work. So I don't know. It's just heartbreaking to see a property like Halo basically being left out to pasture like this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think 343, like you said, it was almost a little bit too much too late. They were swinging for the fences with introducing all this new multiplayer features that nobody else had ever done before. And because they did that, and one of the things that they had promised was, basically like DLCs, continued DLCs. They turned Halo into a live service game, right? And it's all with these kind of live service games, it's all about how can you keep putting out content that's interesting enough that people will stay glued to their seats to play this game. And you see this with Marvel Avengers. Now that it's being canceled, they just couldn't keep up with what they were going to put out, and what they put out just wasn't that interesting. And so that's what 343 ran into. They had all these promised features, All right, same thing with Google Stadia. Google Stadia just ended earlier this week. Um, they had all these promised features and they couldn't deliver on them. And it was like, I get it. You want to do something unique and cool and something that nobody else has ever done before, but you did it. You got to execute on it, and 343 didn't execute on it. And unfortunately, this is a trend that we see a lot with games, especially now with these AAA games. We get a lot of promised features. We get a lot of promised, "Ooh, this is what this is going to do," and then it comes out at launch, and there's bugs, 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 and it takes forever. It takes years for these things to get patched up. You know, and in some games it can work out fine, but in other games not. You know, it didn't work out great for Halo Infinite. It's worked out pretty well for Cyberpunk, but they're
Hmm.
two vastly different things. Cyberpunk is a story-driven game. You know, even though it's like this open world, you know, there's a beginning and end to Cyberpunk. It's not like that with Halo Infinite. It's a game that goes on and on and on and on. And those games that go on and on and on and on, you've got to give the people what they want. And if you can't deliver on that, then what's the point of playing? You know, me personally, I don't have time for that. You know, I've only ever been interested in the single player experience, but a majority of gamers don't care about that. A majority of gamers want to play online and do online co-op and online battles and this and that, which is why you don't see a lot of uh, it, you got to have a truly unique AAA single player experience only to to be profitable, and those are very few and far between. You know, you have you have God of War, you have Zero Dawn, you have Star Wars, but there are so many other games that are multiplayer games that do much more money and profit for these companies like Microsoft and Sony, and uh, that's why they keep making these. You know, I mean, just look at Fortnite. You know,
Hmm.
Fortnite is a game that is always going to make money, even though it's a free game.
Hmm.
But you
Between
know
the
what?
skins and everything else.
Yeah, but you know what they do better than anybody else? They keep putting out. They have seasons,
Hmm.
and they have meaningful seasons and meaningful changes that keep people sucked into that game.
Apex Legends, Valorant,
Yeah,
all of those are doing it. You know what? Another thing, as you just said that, Mike, I just thought about. Most likely, the thing is that the multiplayer experience for Halo is massively dated because what were they going to do that was going to be better than Call of Duty or, like you said, Fortnite? That's where or even Rainbow Six Siege. Those games all have a unique multiplayer experience that unfortunately Halo has not cultivated and updated enough to make it work. And like, because I'm thinking about, like, yes, in Halo you play no, actually, bump that. You know what's the other thing? Destiny 2. Destiny 2's multiplayer experience is what Halo should have been. But guess what? Destiny has it. I mean, excuse me, Bungie has it, and it's in Destiny 2. And I haven't played Destiny 2 in years, but I always hear people talk all the time. It's like, I can't put it down. Every time a new DLC comes out, I can't put it down. I can't put it down. And I personally don't see it because, like you, Mike, I rarely play multiplayer games like that. But it's cool to, for a game like Destiny 2 to still be out here kicking. It tells you, that they've been able to find their niche in the multiplayer experience and not try to surpass anybody. Where I don't know. I don't believe Halo found it. I don't think they were ever trying to. 343 to me has never been the place where Halo belongs. And I don't know how Microsoft kind of screwed that Bungie deal over, but they're too bad, too sad type of situation. But go ahead, Mike, if you got any last points.
yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's 343 is just bungled this whole thing. They did introduce new mechanics into the multiplayer experience that I think a lot of people enjoyed, especially with some of the weapons that they introduced. Or I shouldn't even say weapons, but some of the tech that they introduced, like these harpoons and shit like that. Or I should say harpoons, but grappling guns. But I just don't think it was enough. It felt like that's something that could have been introduced maybe 5 years ago, you know?
Mhm.
And so, and it's not like Destiny 2 has, you know, uh, leaps and bounds. I think what makes Destiny 2 special is that the world is huge,
And
right?
co-player, to be
Right,
real with you,
right. The
because I
world,
can
the world
I
is
could
huge. Like you can go to different planets and
mhm,
inside of planets. Like I think that's what made Destiny 2 leaps and bounds better than some of the other ones because you could go to all these different places. Whereas in Halo Infinite, you're on a ring.
mhm,
That's it. You're just on a ring. You're on one Halo ring, and with Destiny 2, you're able to go to different places. As they still had the same gameplay, so still the same thing. There's nothing different from that. But because you can do that was their thing. You can go to different places. Whereas like say like Titanfall, uh, they introduced a lot of this like you can jump into a mech, you can do wall running and all this other different type of tech. That was groundbreaking back then.
mhm.
Like if you were to do that now with Halo, like that would be freaking awesome. But um it just didn't get that polish that it should have. And I think ever since Halo 4, because I think that's when 343 took over, uh, ever since Halo 4, just it seems to have been a slow, steady decline. And once Microsoft confirms their deal with Activision, then I mean that's
It's a
it.
wrap.
Why else would they
Why
bother
would
with
you
it?
Yeah, I agree.
You got Call of Duty.
Why would you need Halo,
Yeah.
unfortunately? Yeah, and you know what? I'm sitting here thinking about, and I kind of miss Destiny because we used to have fun playing co-op with that,
Hmm.
between
Hmm.
me, you, and my brother. But Mike, let's move on to some other unfortunate. Well, it's not even really unfortunate news because it had a decent run. It's just that it's time now, and this is coming off the official website for the Avengers game that was done by Crystal Dynamics. To our amazing community, after 2.5 years in introducing 12 of Earth's mightiest heroes, following update 2.8 on March 31, 2023, we will no longer add new content or features to Marvel's Avengers. All official support for the game will end on September 30, 2023. Even after official support ceases on September 30, 2023, both single and multiplayer gameplay will continue to be available. See below for more information. Update 2.7, which added the Winter Soldier hero and the Colonial Lab Omega level threat, is the last new content to be added to the game. No new cosmetics are coming to the marketplace, and all final balance updates will occur in update 2.8 in March. Along with the end of development, we'll also be turning off the cosmetics marketplace. When update 2.8 launches on March 31, 2023, credits will no longer be purchasable, and all remaining credit balances will be converted into in-game resources to aid ongoing adventures. And then they have a table showing how that's all going to work out. So I'll start this one off as someone who's played the Marvel Avengers game. This is fine. There's nothing else to it to say than that. And the reason I say that is because that game is fun. It's great. It's fun to play it co-op. It's fun to play as single player. But the problem with that game is that it is repetitive, massively repetitive. You do almost the same thing on every level. Like it's action packed, and like if I was playing with Michael or my brother, then I think for a couple of hours we would have a good time. But if I was to mention that game after 4 months of playing it, they would be like, look, let's find something new to play because there's just nothing else additional to the game. So the other thing coming out of this, if I don't know if you remember, but me and Michael also reported that EA is working on an Iron Man game. So to me, that also tells me that this license for Marvel games is done as well, and it's on to EA now, right? So you can't really do much more without the license of the game that you're working on or whatever if it's gone. So to be fair, I think 2 years is fine. I don't see the multiplayer experience being a massive highlight. Like, for example, I was trying to record some footage of me playing Titanfall, and them servers are bare. Them servers are really bare. I try to get some footage of me playing Battlefield 4. Those servers are bare. And Battlefield 4 to this day is my favorite Battlefield game. But times do change, and unfortunately it's time for the Avengers to go ahead and wrap this up. And like they said, the game is still playable, and most of the game isn't online. The experience, to me personally, isn't the online portion of the game. It's the singular story, which I still think was a decent story. It just, they could have did so much more with that game. But if you're going to say, like, we were just kind of testing the waters, this is the perfect game to say that they were able to do that with. See how Iron Man's functionality, between Thor's, between the Hulk's, because they have all these different powers in one game, and they made it work. It's just that you look at the Hulk, and the Hulk is getting beat by a robot, and you're like, that doesn't really happen in the books, right? And you have to get over that. You see Thor getting beat up by something that you're like, wouldn't happen in the books. You got to get over that. But in the case of everything else, as far as the gameplay, the movements, the use of different characters and how they used to work together in the game, I think it was fine. It's just the fact that they seem to not put enough effort to take this game where it belongs. And I don't want to necessarily compare them to, for example, Rocksteady in the Batman series and stuff like that. But you can see when one company is putting a love letter to the game, and you can see when one person is just going through the paces. But the other thing, and we don't talk about this a lot, is that the creative control in the background, because you have no idea what Disney/Marvel is saying to the company themselves. Like, hey, we like this element, we don't like that element. We want the game to be more kid friendly than it is teenage or adult friendly. Whereas you might be looking at Batman, and me and Michael kind of talked about this, I believe, last week when we were talking about the issues with DC. Warner Brothers is going to let you do whatever you want to as long as it makes money. They don't care, and so, Rocksteady might have had so much more freedom with DC to do whatever they wanted, to make it darker, to make it gloomier, to add these people, these elements, and all these other things. That's the downside we never get to hear. We just hear the rumblings about it, which I remember hearing the rumblings that Marvel is so difficult to work with a game that a lot of people don't want to work with them because so many changes have to be done. Whereas, as we can see with a lot of DC titles, it barely seems that even they care sometimes. But when you get a good company that does, they put some good stuff together. Mike, what's your thoughts about all of this?
Yeah, so my I guess feeling for Marvel's Avengers is opposite. I never played the game. I only watched gameplay footage from what you had posted up, and it just never seemed that interesting to me. And it did seem like utterly repetitive. Um, so I just never could bring myself to pull the trigger to actually play the game. As far as going behind the scenes and whatnot, so I didn't realize this, but Square Enix, they sold off Crystal Dynamics to Embracer Group, and this was in May.
I forgot
And
about that. Yeah,
yeah,
I totally forgot about that.
and so the when you the so I'm just going off an article off of here of Polygon, and they talk about how uh, once that happened, Crystal Dynamics really just shift their focus to a new Tomb Raider game that's in development right now. And so it seems like it was more of a, not so much of working with Disney, but more of a, hey, we're looking to do better things, because Marvel's Avengers has never got that warm of a reception. And again, I think part of that was that they promised a lot and didn't deliver on any of it. And so it's hard to promise like you're gonna deliver X amount of content. Um, and it's hard to do that when companies have deadlines, you know. We're gonna deliver this content every 3 months. Okay, that may be the company line, but the developer may be like, yo, this is gonna take us more like 8 months, you know? And so that's what happened with Halo. It's what happened with Marvel Avengers. You see it with a lot of other games, especially like the AAA games that run this kind of live service. You know, you see it with Destiny 2. You know, like it takes a while for these things to come out. The only people you don't see it with is like I said, Fortnite and Apex Legends. Now those games are much, I don't want to say simpler, less complex, uh, but I think for what they're trying to do, they stay within their own lane. Whereas some of these other games, they try to go too big to try to compete with everybody else, and so it's hard to. Uh, I'll give you another prime example: Pokemon. They just came out with a brand new open world game a few months ago, and the game launched terribly. It was an unfinished product. Um, but the company that makes these Pokemon games, they are on a strict timeline from Nintendo. Okay, you had to come out with a new Pokemon game every so often, and the fact that this latest iteration was their first like open world game, like they were trying to swing for the fences, but they needed more time, and for this thing to barely run on the Nintendo Switch, that's pretty bad because this is like your thing that needs to run on the Nintendo Switch. And so they just didn't have that time to really optimize it and get it to the way it needed to be. And so now they're having to, put out patch after patch after patch. Uh, and so it's fine. That's that type of game. But I think when you're doing like a live service game, I think you can't promise those kind of things. Um, and then their last hurrah was to put out a bunch of stuff at the end, a bunch more characters at the end. And so okay, cool, but that's not going to save you guys. So um, I think because of you know the very cold reception that it got, and then Square Enix selling off Crystal Dynamics uh, to Embracer Group is, okay, well, why are we gonna, bust our butts to keep developing a game that's not doing well,
Hmm.
So I don't know. I liked the concept. I was excited about the concept. It made me think of DC Universe Online,
Mm,
just more refined and better. Uh,
mm,
but it just seems like with those types of games, and oddly enough, DC Universe is still going.
hmm.
Um, So I don't know what they're. I haven't played that game in a minute. I kind of want to go back to see if anything's changed because much like Marvel Avengers, it was very repetitive no matter what you did.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the fact that you could create your own character was an appeal to people, I guess.
Hmm.
So I don't know, and that was more of a. It wasn't the same type of this one. DC Universe Online was more of uh, MMO RPG, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Whereas Marvel's Avengers was more of a story-driven live service game.
Yep.
And so I think the one game that I could say that, and again, it's a different type of game, so it's not like it's an open world, it's not a live service game, but it's a game that they've constantly have updated and put content out for is Payday 2. Like
Mm.
how much money have we put into Payday 2? All
And it's
right.
still going.
It's still going. But the stuff that they put out, I mean, new maps, new missions, new weapons,
Hmm.
every update. Uh, and so that was cool. That was real cool. It wasn't like Fortnite where you get a new skin. Okay, well you got skins in Payday 2, but you also got new weapons, you got new gadgets, you got new maps, different types of missions to do on those maps. It wasn't just about robbing banks. It was, there's a one that we did where it was robbing an armored car,
Yep.
and so you had all those different types of things that were very unique. And then they did introduce new characters. You had John Wick in there, and that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
So when a company like that does it right, but they're a smaller company, there's not a lot of pressure from the top, uh, and
Well,
the fans.
also they were dead broke. So I don't know if you remember this, Mike. We talked about it a little bit, but Payday, the company that did Payday 2, because everyone was wondering when the Payday 3 is coming. And they put all of their money into another game, and that game failed. And so they kind of got stuck with Payday 2. So they've been using Payday 2 by just providing updates and everything to get them back on their feet or whatever. But
Right.
In
Yeah, and
doing so, they became legendary.
yeah, and I think that's what the fans kind of expected from them was to keep putting out more stuff, and but
Hmm.
they never really gave a schedule for when they were coming out with more stuff. They just say, "Hey, we're looking to do this, we're looking to do that," and they kept feeding people stuff. Whereas, uh, Halo Infinite promised to deliver things. Google Stadia promised to deliver things. Marvel Avenger promised to deliver things and just didn't do it, especially in time. So, um, I thought Marvel Avengers was a good concept. Uh, I just did not think. I think again they tried to swing for the fences, and sometimes you just gotta. I think you gotta start a little bit small and then grow into something. Um, but they right off the jump wanted to do something that nobody else had ever done, and it just didn't work out for them.
I am mistaken. Oh my goodness. I'm actually super excited now. So I just decided to type in while you were talking Payday 3 release date. And it's coming in 2023, y'all.
Oh,
Oh yes. I'm so
nice.
excited. I'm so excited. This is a game that's near and dear to me, my brother, and Michael. And the reason I say that because Michael, my brother Brandon, and myself, when we played games, Payday took over a significant amount that time. That game came out in 2013. I was in a whole different country. Michael was on the west side of the world, and we all still played the mess out of this game for years, for years. And so, like listen to Michael talk about DC Online. The unfortunate thing, I played it about 2 years ago, and it's still a fun experience, but the graphics are out of date. It's
Right.
just it needs a technical upgrade, and I think that game would be fine, even though, like you said, it's still repetitive. Is I don't know what, but Payday 3 always gave us something new. We're gonna go and we're gonna take out this person. We're gonna go take out this bank. Michael and I made meth for hours and then fought all type of police. And look, we didn't make meth in real life. We made this in a virtual world, but it was a great experience. And now I'm looking on Steam, and they have a VR experience. If I ever decide to finally buy a VR headset, it'd be cool to play Payday in a VR setting because the whole point is that there's so much chaos going around with all these cops and SWAT team members coming through that it'd be super fun to play it in a VR setting, but that's neither here nor there. But absolutely, just going back to Marvel Avengers, it's kind of unfortunate that things like this has happened, and I get what sometimes I think the hard part is determining what gamers want these days, right? While trying to be original and still be fresh, right? Because Marvel Avengers on paper should have been great. It should have been terrific. But then if you feel, and here's the thing, and Michael knows this because he's been gaming just as long as I have. We have been jilted by superhero games time and time again between Superman, Hulk, there was a Wolverine game, there was a Deadpool game. Deadpool was actually pretty good, I heard. I never played it. But there's a lot of superhero games that came out there that was just a license of the movie, and they were never that great. And it wasn't until around the time of the Arkham games for Batman, that things started to get better. The first Spider-Man game was really good, and of course now the later ones have been great. But it took a while before those worlds built up, and then there's always been certain hurdles because of whatever superhero we're talking about. You have Iron Man compared to, let's say, for example, Superman is supposedly godlike. How do you make that translate into a game compared to Batman, who's, even though he's doing all these jumps and leaps and stuff like that, he's still human, right? And how do you make that work compared to, you're gonna, let's say, Green Lantern, the Flash, Wonder Woman? We got the Injustice games that were great because then they got an ability to use these powers, and some of them made sense and some of it didn't. But that's some of the complications that you have to deal with when you're playing with these worlds compared to creating a new IP, and you have something like GTA or Red Dead Redemption or Cyberpunk, because you're not starting with a canvas already pretty much drawn together. Like even with Spider-Man, right? That canvas is already drawn together, and it's hard for you to deviate for certain things when it comes to Spider-Man. because you're like, well, why would Spider-Man do that? But the good thing is that Spider-Man is kind of human. He just has superhero. He has superhuman strength, and he has some spider abilities, and like Michael mentioned before, the gadgets compared to you. And that would make it easier to make a game like for Blue Beetle than it would be for. I'll use the Hulk again because the Hulk is indestructible. How are you gonna? And then you like you saw in Marvel Avengers, couple shots and he's being taken out, and you're like, wait a second, that's the Hulk. That shouldn't take him out like that. But that's what the writers have to fix. But I hope, fingers crossed, that EA can take something with the Marvel license and do something with it. And I'm not really that I'm not really that enthused that something like that's going to happen, but we'll see. But anyway, let's get on to some more happier things. And I think it's time that we talk about something that I've been waiting for a long time. And I still got to wait a long time for it, but it's good to finally hear that some progression is finally being made. And what am I talking about? I am talking about Invincible season 2. What the fuck, Amazon? Why has it taken so long for you to put this game out there? And I know it's kind of hard to swear these days on YouTube, so I won't use it anymore. But it boggles the mind that it's taken this long to get some sort of production started on a season 2 of this TV show. Because the first season was terrific. Everyone's excited. We couldn't wait for more. They had they had everything you needed. The show was great. The social media advertising was great. And they finally, to be honest with you, outside of The Boys and maybe Jack Ryan, they were boosting up the shows for Amazon, and then you all take forever to get the second season out there. And we still got to wait because the second season isn't even coming until late 2023. So to me, that means October, November, December, which sucks because it's just taking too long already. So all I can hope for is more episodes, maybe, but I highly doubt that. So let's say we're going to get 10 episodes again, and we're going to then have to wait another year and a half, 2 years before we get a season 3, if we're lucky. I don't know, but I'm excited that the show is coming back. I've been waiting forever, and it's good to see some good news on that. Mike, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I was happy to see that they're uh, teased. It was a very interesting trailer or teaser. Uh, it's really just Invincible and the diner with Alan the Alien, and Alan the Alien's basically pressing Invincible for when we're coming back. Um, and so they kind of tease about how a lot of it has to do with the writing and the animating and the voice acting. And I thought about the voice acting part of it because they have so many big actors in this show. You're talking about Steven Yeun, you're talking about Seth Rogen, you're also talking about J.K. Simmons.
Yep.
Talk about J.K. Simmons in there. So they got a lot of talent. And so I don't know if it's actually an Amazon issue at this point. I think it's more of a making sure that the writing is squared away and then working around people's schedules. Because it's not like these are guys that are solely dedicated to Invincible. These are actors that have careers and try to do their own thing. And so trying to get them to, it's like Archer. There are times where Archer, a season comes out, the next year another season comes out, next year another season comes out, but then there are times where you got to wait a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly because of everybody's doing a lot of other things. Same thing with like Rick and Morty. Like I love Rick and Morty, but we've waited. There have been seasons where we've waited longer than this just to get a season, just to get our 10 episodes. And so uh, I get it. There's a lot of things going on in the background, that you want to make sure are good. So uh, who knows when we're gonna get this year? They said late 2023, but we don't have a solid date yet.
Mm-hmm.
And, and really, he said at the end of the trailer, he said, "Yeah, 2020, late 2023, maybe."
Yeah. Yeah. He
So
sure
that
did.
doesn't give me any hope at all either. So uh, I get it. That's always been the knock with Amazon. If shows come out and develop it, and to me, is it? I guess is it really Amazon or is it just? Because not like Amazon doesn't have the money to do the production.
Hmm.
It's getting the writers and the actors and the producers and the directors all working at the same time to get this production underway. I mean, we've
I
seen it
think
with
it's because I
Netflix.
think I think partially too is, at least with Netflix, even if I might not like the show, Netflix has a staple of shows that come out throughout the year, that if this show is done, that you might like this, this, and this. And even if you don't, they at least made an attempt to bring something else out. With Amazon, and don't hold me to this, Amazon as of right now has the that touring show with the guys from Top Gear. They have Invincible, Jack Ryan, Jack Reacher. They used to have some other shows, but I think they've all been canceled, or have their series has finished. And then they had that Chris Pratt TV show that I've still yet to watch. And so because their schedule is fluctuated, and you're just left with so much downtime of no type. Oh, and The Boys. There's so much downtime for their programming, that I think that's what makes it even more visible as to why is this taking so long. Like, I agree with you, Mike, because Stranger Things takes forever to come out. But while I'm waiting on Stranger Things, I might get I might get a decent documentary. I might get a decent TV show. I'm an anime fan. Might get some anime. So there's something to hold me over. With Amazon's catalog doesn't help them hold over the weight for sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it all depends on what you're watching. Like when I'm waiting for Stranger Things, I don't watch Netflix.
Mm,
You know, because there's nothing on Netflix that I really want to see. Like if I want to watch something and it's so like okay, so between seasons for Stranger Things, I'm just not on Netflix. That don't I literally only have Netflix for Stranger Things. So then I'll go over to Disney and I'll watch my shows on Disney. And then once that season's over, then I'll head over to Hulu. And Hulu for me is where it's at because Hulu has everything, right?
mm.
Um, and so like even with Amazon, we waited years for Jack Ryan. I'm not watching anything else on Amazon Prime. Reacher when Reacher comes out with another season, it comes out. Same thing with the boys, and some of the other shows. I don't necessarily, and everybody's use case is different, but um, I'm not looking at Amazon to put out exclusive after exclusive after exclusive because I have so many other streaming services that I can go um to watch other shows, you know? And I think I don't know if this is where Amazon's mentality is at, is like, okay, that's cool. You guys go to another thing, you'll be back for the next season of this, and then you'll run through our thing. Um, and I think for me at least, one of the reasons why I don't do Netflix is because they shotgun so much stuff on there, and then when there is something that you do want to watch, uh, it gets lost in all the. It's like when we were initially watching the Marvel shows on Netflix. We'd have to scour through the categories and search for Luke Cage or Daredevil
Hmm.
because after a year you had all this other stuff that was recommended. It's like, well, I don't want all that other stuff. I want to know where my Marvel shows are at. And so to me, it doesn't really matter like what comes on in between them because I know I have other streaming services to go to. But if I just had Prime, then yeah, then I would be like, okay, I don't really have anything else to go to. I'm getting kind of fed up. Uh, you know, I love Stranger Things, but I know I can go to the other 20 services that I have for crying out loud. Like,
Yeah.
I pay for so many different services. I know I can go somewhere else to find something. And then once that season's over, no matter what service it's on, I can go back to another thing. It's like for um, Steam Deck. I know I have to wait for the new God of War game. Okay. But that's fine. I can my backlog of games on Steam are so huge. I wouldn't even have to play all of those games until to the end before I get to the new God of War. I might get through a quarter of them, and then God of War comes out, and I can play another quarter of them, and then in between each one of those ones, I'm acquiring even more games. So um, yeah, I don't. For me, at least, it's not a matter of what that channel or that service has in between seasons. I think where I start to get irritated is when I'm waiting 2, 3, 4 years for a new season. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm glad that we're getting Invincible. Uh, I hope it comes out this year, maybe. But it's one of those ones where I know what I'm getting at Amazon. I'm gonna get a great show. I'm gonna get a great season, and then I'm just gonna have to leave Amazon and wait for something else to come out.
Yeah.
Um, I love Jack Ryan, but once the season's over, I already know. Okay, I'm done with Amazon. The only time I watch Amazon is when I'm watching football, and even then, football season is about to end in 6 weeks. So after that, I'm not really on Amazon until another Reacher comes out or something else. You know what I'm saying? So,
Is it because of the shipping portion that you stay with Amazon Prime?
oh yeah, absolutely. I spend more money on Amazon than any other place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's because we're in this have it now culture, and nobody does it better than Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
They
Convenience.
just came out with a pharmacy for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So they're the
I
mega
hear that.
corporation that's going to take over the world. You know,
Yes.
it'll be Amazon versus Disney. You know, which corporation are you going to work for? So yeah, yeah. I don't stick with Amazon to. It's the main draw for me is not the programming. That's just a bonus. That's just icing on the cake. The main draw for me is that Prime service.
I agree with you. I think because unfortunately Prime doesn't work the same way it does in Illinois, here in Hawaii, just because of time delays. I think there's a warehouse on the island, but that warehouse only has a handful of things. So yes, we might get some items faster than we did before, but you're talking about a week. And I'm one of them guys that, like, if something's not providing me a service, I want to cancel it as soon as possible.
Right.
And I can't cancel Amazon Prime because I still want to make sure I get my packages within that week instead of it now being 2 weeks or whatever the situation ends up being. But I agree with you too. Like, there's other shows, and I think for me more than anything is just the fact that I don't know. I look at Amazon sometimes and I'm like, their streaming service has so much potential. It doesn't move as fast as others, and that could be a pro or a con, right? Netflix's problem has been the fact that they cause binge culture and now they can't get away from it. There's no way that they can make a show on a weekly basis, make their new shows on a weekly basis and only have it come out week by week. It has to be all or none. And I think because HBO didn't do that, because Amazon didn't do that, and I believe Hulu doesn't do that either. They've been able to kind of fare this storm a little better because they can consistently try to pull you in or whatnot. And and I keep on forgetting about Apple's streaming platform because I've been meaning to finish up Echo 3. I watched the first episode, but I haven't done anything since then. But it's again, I just look at it sometimes, and like I said, the length is what annoys me more than anything, not necessarily just their catalog, but the length has always been the biggest gripe. Because, like, I just looked, Invincible came out in 2021, we're in 2023, so it's going to be over 2 years. I know some shows have taken 6 years or whatever, but it sometimes it's just, if especially if it's your favorite show, that's where the annoyance, one of your favorite shows, that's when the annoyance comes in, because of course you wish that you can get your hands on that show whenever. But it's all good. We're I'm excited. I know Mike's excited. We'll be watching it as a family and then talking about it on here. I'm sure of that. So Mike, let's get to the other thing that we got this week. We got a trailer for season 3 of The Mandalorian. And man, I must admit, I am super excited. I am super excited. And I'm a casual. I'll be clear. I am a Star Wars casual. But what they showed me is like they are coming with more action, more storylines. We're gonna find out more about the Mandalorians and everything this season. So I am hype. I am hype. Mike, what's your thoughts? Because you are our resident Star Wars guy. So tell me, what did you think of that Mandalorian trailer?
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. Had a lot. There's a lot to unpack in that trailer. I think the biggest thing is that this is going to be more focused on the Mandalorian lore, and
Mhm.
so where we left things off was that you know Mando and so Din Djarin and Grogu. Din, he's got the dark saber. Okay, and the dark saber is a focal point within the Mandalorians, as whoever has that sword is basically the leader. And so we saw in a previous season where he was trying to rescue Grogu from the Empire, and at the end, Luke Skywalker comes in there to save everybody. One of the big repercussions uh, from that episode was that uh, you had I think Bo Katan that was played by, I can't think of her name now, but she's from Battlestar Galactica. And in fact, she's actually from Star Wars Clone Wars. She plays the original voice actor for that character. Um, but her huge thing is that she is the heir to the throne, but she can't rule. Like, nobody's gonna follow her if she doesn't have the saber. And so the way that Mando got the saber uh, was, I mean, it was cool, it was awesome, but the huge issue was that the only way for her to get the saber is if she defeats him in combat. And so while they're not at odds right now, it seems like she's going to be using him to get what she needs to get done, and then at the end, she's going to find a way to fight him honorably, quote unquote, honorably, and get that saber so she can bring the Mandalorians back up. The other
Mike, that
part,
was sorry to cut you off. That was Katie Sackhoff.
oh right, Katie Sackhoff, and so the other part to that is, the Mandalorian in the show. There's two different, I guess, types of Mandalorians. You have uh you have Din Djarin's crew, who have been labeled as this super ultra religious sect that never takes off their helmet. And if you do, you're not a Mandalorian anymore. Okay. But then you have Bo Katan's group, who are the actual born on Mandalore type of people, and feel like their way is the way to go. So it almost seems like we're gonna kind of get like a Civil War type of setting in this season. Um, but then you also see the Doctor from the first season in there. He looks like he's driving through um, some metropolitan planet. It could be uh, one of the major planets. Who knows? But Dr. Pershing, that's the guy. You can see him driving through. Like, looks like Coruscant, um, and you don't know what his motivations are. So I can tell you from what I've read and where this is going to, because this is going to get crazy. This is going to lead into a lot of stuff. All right. I can tell you that we're going to see Grogu become or start to train in the Mandalorian ways. I think that's what is ultimately, he turned down Luke Skywalker and joining the Jedi Temple, and we're going to see him become um, a Mandalorian himself, and so that's going to be pretty cool. And then we're going to see him develop more. We're gonna see there's a scene at the end of that trailer where it looks like he's helpless against this alien attacker, and he just he just pushes him straight out of the cave that he's in. And so I think we're going to see Grogu start to really have his powers develop. We did see a flashback, so we're going to learn more about what happened with him and the Purge. With Anakin, we may even see an Anakin cameo during the season. So I'm pretty excited. Allegedly, Ahsoka is supposed to make a cameo appearance, so that'll be pretty cool. So that means we'll see Rosario Dawson
That
again.
show should be coming out this year, right?
Yeah, and I'm very excited for that one. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of stuff that people should really pay attention to because uh, what they're doing, between Dave Filoni and John Favreau, what they're doing is sculpting a new Star Wars. And I read a thing. I'm not huge on the conspiracy theories, but the facts that they spit it out made a lot of sense. The last 3 Star Wars movies took place in an entirely different timeline or universe per se, um, and this is a completely different timeline, and this is what we're actually getting. And so, if that's true, it's going to be amazing because they're ultimately leading to bringing in a big bad named Admiral Thrawn. And I'm telling you, he's going to be way better than Emperor Palpatine. He's going to be way better than Darth Vader. He's going to be way better than Darth Maul. Like, he's going to be legit, and people are going to like this guy, especially if they cast him right, which I think they will. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens. It's going to be, we've got Mandalorian, we've got Ahsoka coming out. I think that we're going to see a lot with this next year with Star Wars shows that are going to be pretty exciting.
So, Mike, just to ask, when you say different multiverse, are we saying that those 3 movies don't exist, but Luke, Leia are still alive, and Han are still alive?
Well,
Are we?
that we don't know. So
Okay.
we won't know that until they flesh out this story.
Okay.
But there was an episode in the Star Wars animated Clone Wars show
Hmm.
where was it Clone Wars or was it Rebels? It was Rebels. I'm sorry. So there's an episode in Star Wars Rebels where uh one of the characters, I can't remember his name, but they're at a Sith Lord temple, and he's there with a couple of his crew and then Ahsoka. Um, and they meet up or they get confronted by Darth Vader. And this is
Hmm.
when Ahsoka, it's one of the biggest battles that you'll ever see in Star Wars. Is when Ahsoka finds out or confirms that that Anakin Skywalker turned into Darth Vader. It was a
Mm.
very emotional episode. And uh, from the theory is uh, right as Darth Vader is getting ready to kill Ahsoka, this other character pulls her out into another dimension because he's walking this whole timeline. And there's a timeline where he pulls her out and a timeline where he doesn't. And from going on in the show, she survived. But the timeline where she doesn't get pulled out, she gets killed by Darth Vader. And that swirls into those 3 movies, what happens in those 3 movies.
Ah,
Um,
interesting.
so it's a huge interesting thing. I'll send you the video on it. It's crazy. I don't know if it's true or not.
Mm.
But a lot of the stuff that they spit out made a lot of sense. And so if that's true, that would be amazing.
Mm.
And even if it isn't, because I had to think about it as far as timelines go. The way the timeline has gone so far, because this is supposed to take place after Return of the Jedi, but before Force Awakens. Uh, and so the way that they've done the whole Mandalorian verse, I'll say the Mandalorian verse, the way they've done it and how the timelines sync up or don't sync up is where you start to see like, nobody knows who the Jedi are, or
Mhm.
they've completely forgotten who the Jedi are. There are only a handful of people who know who the Jedi are, who are the Force wielders, who the Sith are. Very few people know that. Um, so that puts them far from Return of the Jedi, uh, and far from Force Awakens. But I don't know. It's just what we'll have to see because the Empire is completely destroyed, and I should say completely destroyed, but they're in complete disarray in the Mandalorian series, whereas in Force Awakens they're not. So I don't know. There are a lot of questions. I think what we're going to see is we're going to start to see what these next couple of shows are a lot of answers to those questions
Hmm.
and where the overall story is going to go. I think if you're just a casual, it's going to be it's going to be all Mandalorians almost all the time. Like I said, I think the big thing is that it's going to be a civil war between the two different factions, basically, of the Mandalorians, and we're going to see a lot more of what happened to them, why the planet was destroyed, um, and then we may even see who ultimately gets that dark saber. Will it be Bo-Katan or will it be Din Djarin? So I don't know, but either way, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Like I said, I'm a casual, but the Star Wars TV shows. If we're going off a percentage, I feel like the Star Wars shows have fared better to me than some Marvel shows. And part of it is because I don't know all of the Star Wars lore, so I can go in there with zero expectations. Shows with Marvel are a lot of characters that I grew up with. So I'm expecting something, even though I don't want to give it all of my expectations. I'm still expecting something. And those shows don't necessarily hit the marks. You're glad that they've been created. They might be even a decent show. It's just that sometimes they just happen to miss the mark that you're personally looking for or whatnot. But it's what it is. Did you have something to say, Mike?
No, I think if you're even if you're like a casual who's never really been into Star Wars, and I think you hit it on a point. I think the Marvel shows that have come out have been hit or miss. I think my only, I loved WandaVision, and I loved Loki even more. But then after that, I just haven't had that same feeling with any of the other shows. I think with the Star Wars ones, the only one that really didn't hit with me that much was maybe Boba Fett. Uh, but other than that, like, I think where they're going with it, especially with like Andor, I loved Andor. It's just a great show.
I
Uh,
still need to watch that.
it's really good. It's a complete departure from any of the other shows, but it's really good. And so I'm excited to see what they do with that. Excited to see what they do with Mandalorian this season. Uh, can't wait for Ahsoka to come out. And I think that if you haven't seen like haven't read any of the comic books or read the novels, I think it's fine. Because I think the way that Filoni and Favreau are constructing this, I think this is a great jumping point into um, the whole Star Wars lore because you're not just starting with Jedi, you're not just starting off with the Sith, lightsaber battles. You're starting off in a world that's in disarray, a universe that's in disarray. And you've got this republic who seems to be policing the galaxy. You've got this empire that is seemingly trying to get back to its glory days. You got people who are just struggling to uh, maintain life, uh, and then we're sprinkling in, the force wielding guys. We're sprinkling in the Jedi, but we don't really know, what they're all about. Don't really know who the good guys or the bad guys are, and or just what their motivations are. And I think that if anything is more exciting to jump into because you're like, well, who is this person? Who is that person? And
Hmm.
I think the way that they've crafted this story is pretty good. Like it's a bonus for me because I've had seen all the previous like animated shows. Uh so it's all bonus for me. Uh and the people that they're bringing in I think are great. I can't wait to see the live action versions of some of these characters that I've grown up reading about. Uh but I think for a casual, I think if you're going to choose the Marvel shows or the Star Wars shows to start with, go with the Star Wars ones. Because with the Marvel ones, you gotta at least have seen all the movies. You know,
At least seen Endgame or understand Endgame. What is it? What's the first one before Endgame?
Infinity War,
Infinity War and Endgame, at least.
right?
Yeah, but
You know,
yes, you're right. There's a lot of other history in all the other movies, but it's also interconnected. It makes it more. It makes it even more harder to, I guess, find a jumping on point.
yeah.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of another episode of the Nation80 podcast. This has been episode 30. Look for us as we will continue to keep on building on the channel. Thank you for everyone who subscribed, for the likes, the few comments that we've already gotten. We're going to keep building this thing up this year, like I said before. And until then, I will just ask for you to keep your imagination up, and we will see you on the next one.